even tariffs have rules. The court struck down the vast majority of President Trump's import tax, just the latest in a string of legal losses for the president's agenda.
Plus, a former Trump cabinet official is set to face fiery questions from Congress on the Jeffrey Epstein case, what we could learn from Alex Acosta.
And later, Trump eyes Chicago, how the Windy City prepares for a possible federal crackdown like the one we saw in D.C.
Welcome back to the Weekend Primetime. We begin this hour with breaking news, the latest setback in court for President Trump and his immigration agenda. Just hours ago, a federal judge halted the administration from deporting more than 600 Guatemalan children in the dead of night to their home country, some of whom were orphans and survivors of abuse. This brand new video, courtesy of KVEO, shows a plane on a tarmac in Texas with some of those children on board. At one point, you can see people getting off the plane and buses being driven away. Efrain Alvarez, Vice President of Litigation at the National Immigration Law Center, whose team filed the emergency request that stopped these deportations, joined us earlier this evening. Take a listen.
These are children. And what kind of country have we become that the most powerful and rich country in the world is targeting 7-year-olds, orphan 10-year-olds, and preventing them from having the chance to present their case in front of a judge?
Joining us now are Lydia DePillis, economics reporter for the New York Times, and Danny Savalos, MSNBC legal analyst and criminal defense attorney. Danny, that was just insanity that you had around 600 children, underage minors, according to reports of what happened, who in the middle of the night, a federal judge had to stop their removal from the United States, some of the children orphaned, some survivors of abuse, in the dead of night on a holiday weekend. What do you make of how it got shut down, what the DOJ called a pilot program with Guatemala, and what do you see happening next?
Just as a practitioner, what jumps out at me about a lot of these situations is just how fast some of these litigants have to move to avoid complete disaster. And we live in an era, at least for attorneys, of electronic filing and word processing and being able to cut and paste and type and file things relatively quickly. And I wonder if we were dealing with these same issues just 15 years ago, in an era when e-filing was really still at the beginning. How would any of this even work when in an era where you still had to run down to the courthouse with a stack of paper and get it stamped or drop it off in the mailbox overnight over the weekend, which I remember doing? I mean, a lot of these children would already have been gone. I mean, there just would be no remedy. And I know the question is more, how shocking is it? Yes, it is. But that's what I just keep thinking about, I guess, as a practitioner. There are attorneys out there who are challenging these removals and have to do so at breakneck speed, whether it's Kilmar Abrego Garcia's attorneys scrambling to file, not only file, but file in the right jurisdiction where he's being held, or in situations like this where you have to file, as you said, overnight, and judges are dealing with this overnight. I think the modern federal judge has to realize that taking the job means it's a 24-hour-a-day job. It's not just a 9-to-5 job like it might have been back in the 80s.
Lydia, Trump has had a lot of legal setbacks with him trying to fire Lisa Cook. I'm wondering if where this is now and how you think this is going to affect, because these, it's a pause, but he's lost in court with the tariffs too. So there's sort of a real sense that everything he's trying to do in this is kind of illegal. So I'm wondering what you think his next move will be.
Well, I think that Trump has proven over and over again that what he does is negotiate with the courts. He takes out a maximalist position, gets knocked back, tries something else, tries a different way, moves around it, and ultimately he has ended up moving the ball further and further down the field in his direction. So I don't think anyone should see this as the end of the tariff story. What happened on Friday, obviously, was a big setback, probably expected in the legal community because the case is pretty clear cut here. But it is one that he reacted to immediately in extreme terms, saying that the future of the country depends on these tariffs going forward, et cetera, et cetera. And that is because it is one of his only tools of diplomacy, one of his only tools to raise money. And so that's why he sees it as existential and will pursue it in whatever way he can.
Danny, where do you see the Supreme Court falling on this case when October 14th, I believe, is when they've set the deadline, mid-October. There's a stay until then, so his policy is still intact. But how do you see this going when it goes to the highest court in the land?
It's complicated, but the Supreme Court has a number of tools at its disposal if it wants to essentially slow walk this case or create a lot of time. Not necessarily that they even want to, but a lot of different options that they take could result in delay. I mean, it's already being sent back, as you said, being delayed until October. We're very early in this Trump presidential term, but this will at least, arguably, they could delay it to the midterms. They could delay it to many different significant points. And you'll recall that during the era of his criminal prosecutions, the court was able, in some ways, to create some time and space until stretching that out inured to his benefit. And here we are, 4 prosecutions later, only one ever went to trial, and that was a state court prosecution where he was found guilty. So in terms of the Supreme Court, they can do a lot of different things to affect that delay, and especially the fact that it's already being sent back down procedurally, and stayed, it's going to create some delay in addition to that.
So, Lydia, if you look at the Wall Street Journal, they put out a damning op-ed against Donald Trump, basically saying that Trump isn't a tariff king, adding this line: if he can impose a tax on any imported product anytime he wants, he really has the power of a king. The issue, and we had Neil Cattell on the show yesterday explaining to us that the issue with the tariffs is that the Constitution is very clear. Congress has the power to levy tariffs and taxes, not the president. And now Donald Trump is being called out by what is historically a friendly newspaper to him, certainly on the economic issue. But how does that perception of Donald Trump being a tariff king resonate with the business community, resonate with business leaders who are worried about him now imposing this tariff, which effectively is a tax on imported goods brought into this country? Sure.
So I immediately heard from across the business community Friday evening at 6 p.m. sighs of relief, joy, shouts of joy, but also worry that this may not actually pan out the way that they hope. And I think what they were reacting to is this idea that someone is stepping in to say, no, you cannot stretch this law to like a rubber band forever and ever. It's got to break at some point. And so I think that is what the courts are saying. The power to tax is the power to destroy. And for businesses, there's only so high they can raise their prices before consumers will start to push back and say, we're not buying this thing anymore. So that was, I think, a tremendous relief for many, although they still face tremendous uncertainty. If you're a business that has declined to raise your prices because you were hoping that maybe these tariffs would be lifted, you're still not sure that will be the case. So I think that is the uncertainty that many businesses continue to see.
Lydia, we see the markets seem to be sort of sanguine, but there's a larger sort of unhappiness with the bond markets. Do you think they're sort of waiting for this rate cut? And also, I would love you to talk about what this rate cut could mean if we have another quarter of negative growth.
Sure. So the markets have been hitting up against all-time highs for months and months now, and there's a lot going on with them. I think mostly what you see is this tremendous confidence in the power of artificial intelligence to buoy growth in the years to come. But they're also sort of troubled by ongoing uncertainty and mostly choosing to ignore it. But I do think that once rates start to decrease, you're going to see a pop of activity in parts of the economy that have been just waiting and waiting and waiting for borrowing costs to go down a little bit. Now, the forecasts are still for growth to slow down quite a bit in the second half of the year, but that doesn't have to be catastrophic. That can just be sort of a soft patch.
What are you hearing from business leaders about Trump's decision to take an ownership stake in Intel, and how it's creeping into state-owned businesses and market meddling in a way that the United States has never seen before?
I think there's a lot of disconcerting behavior and thoughts on Wall Street about that. It's just this sense that if Trump asks, do we have to say yes? You know, Tim Cook managed to navigate this fairly well, coming in, being very flattering, offering to start a plant in Texas and invest billions of dollars.
Oh, I thought it's because he also gave him like
also the gold statue. Right. So some CEOs have navigated this better than others, but there is this fear that if he comes asking, what will we have to give up? And ownership stake, nobody wants to do that. Debt dilutes your shareholders. I'm surprised there's not more outcry on Wall Street about this.
Let me ask you about what happened with Lisa Cook in the Federal Reserve and being a governor on it. This is something that has caused a lot of eyebrows to go up. He is accusing Lisa Cook of mortgage fraud, but what do you make of the fact that he is attempting to fire her? She's not countersuing him. And the fact that somebody who is not given due process yet, she has not actually been adjudicated in a court of law of mortgage fraud or anything of that, is being dismissed against the laws of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, I don't know that you even reach that issue yet, because I think the first issue is that this is essentially a for-cause position. And so the argument also would be that, look, even allegations that you did whatever you did with your mortgage or your applications doesn't go to your job. It doesn't go to how you do your job. So if you make those allegations and you can tie them somehow to a for-cause termination, then maybe you have an argument. But making unadjudicated allegations like that, I think that bolsters Lisa Cook's case. This is, as I said, statutorily a for-cause position. I think Trump's going to have something of a legal uphill battle here. But as we've already pointed out, I think it's a really great point that Trump's approach is just try stuff. You know, if we weren't on TV, I'd say try bleep and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, well, then so what? I mean, I've wasted a few pens and a few pieces of paper. That's his executive order policy. Throw it out there, let it get litigated, and if you lose, nothing really is ventured or gained. You just go right back to the drawing board, the dry erase board, whatever, and try it again. Look at how much litigation he's created simply by saying, I desire to fire Lisa Cook. If she wins, she wins. If she doesn't, then he's been victorious, and he's exerted virtually no effort, burned very few calories.
Yeah, fled the zone in every sense of the word.